Hello, hello! Merxerain here, and we're back. Episode 35 of our Enigmatica 6 Expert playthrough. And look in the background, look at our cobble farm. Going about its busy day, collecting all the cobbles. Today, we are going to start with looking at our board. We haven't touched this board in a long time, and we can see that there are some things on here that no longer apply. The Tinker Smeltery, we have that in our basement. We will want to make an actual Tinker building at some point, but that was kind of small. We wanted that for some bees. And then we have auto cobble completed. We're gonna move villager trading up to this board and remove it from this one. Right, we have the breeder, we have it set up, we're ready. We could start setting up the guild halls that I talked about, but we don't need to start there today. So I'm going to go ahead and lay out a few tasks, a few things to keep in mind for what we're going to do today with refined storage. Okay, these are the things that I think we need to focus on, right? We're going to get our basic refined storage setup going in our basement, and this will eventually move to a real, storage location. And my plan is to build a large building that's going to have all sorts of auto crafting in it. That means we're going to have its own pressure chamber. It's going to have its own setup of probably thermal machines, and then we'll convert those to mechanism at some point or something like that, right? We're going to need to ensure we have enough power. We already know that the base refined storage controller takes a lot of power. I think our current system will handle it, but once we start adding in things like crafters, we're going to have a problem, I think, on power. So we might have to play a little bit with that. That's going to mean we're probably going to have to get into Powah, the mod, sooner than later. Very specifically, let's go ahead and take a look at this. If we have a Stirling Dynamo, all right, here's the Stirling Dynamo. In the basement, I have one fully upgraded. And when I say fully upgraded, I don't mean with the integral components. That would actually make it better. But I have it fully upgraded with the add-ons, and it does 240 RF per tick. But if we look at Powah, and we go to the Furnator, this is the basic Furnator, the very first one, and it generates 140 FE per tick. That's actually not too bad for not having any, augments on it. But if we go up to one more phase, hardened, that's 360 FE per tick. So we could very easily, right, use some Stirling Dynamos and create some things. But in order to get here, right, we need to be able to energize steel. That's energizing from Powah. So we're not quite there yet, but we could be if we need to. If we need the extra power early on, we're going to do this sooner than later. Powah would also let us get into things like wireless energy, which would be great. Yeah, so then crafters, right? We're going to get crafters set up, and we'll take a look at this real quick. We have the refined storage crafter. It's just this one, right? This one crafter, I think it has 7 or 9 slots in which it can do crafts, which isn't very many. So we could set up a whole array of these, get a whole bunch of them going. But there is a mod called extra storage in this pack as well. So just to start off with, in order to make the crafter, we do need mechanical crafters, and we need all of the different kinds of processors around a machine casing. And again, machine casing is this. But we can turn the crafter into a diamond crafter. Well, that's not necessarily the next page. The iron crafter. Oh, these are just colors. Iron? Iron. This one could hold 27 patterns, which is pretty great. And honestly, it's not too crazy to make. This might be the hardest bit. But the hardened integral components, here we are. We've already made fluid cells. We can make these redstone flux cells. We can make advanced PCBs. In fact, we've made a lot of those for all the computer craft things. So we could certainly get this for the iron crafter. We haven't touched neural processors yet. These neural processors come from Powah energizing. So if we want to get to the iron crafters, we will need to get some Powah going. One more thing, if we look into the iron crafter again, we just want to take a look at what does it take to make an advanced control circuit. Well, this is a problem for us. This takes a dissolution chamber from industrial foregoing. We're not there yet. So we have some extra things to put on our board. Lots of storage buses, because right now we can't use the disk drive. Let's go ahead and take a look at refined storage disk drive. In order to make the disk drive, we have to have access to elite control circuits, which again, our dissolution chamber. Oh, but even so, that's the disk drive. If we want to make a storage disk, take a look at this. The 1K storage part, disabled in expert. So we have to start with a 16K, okay? Again, right, we shouldn't be able to even make this. Let's just double check. Yeah, there's no recipe. So if we come all the way up to 16K, we're going to see we have to do a 16K storage part, which is an assembly controller recipe. And if we want to look at that one, we'll look for the drill and the laser. Here we are. This takes dimensional storage crystals, silicon, we can do this, cardboard box, basic control units, not that one, this one. They come from a bunch of these basic memory chips, improved processors. I think we could probably make these. But this dimensional storage crystal, this is the real hiccup to our disk drive problem. In order to make this, we need a sawmill or precision sawmill. These aren't, I'm not concerned about this, but the dimensional crystal matrix, we need to have Stryger's higher binding from the occult ritual, from occultism. We don't have any of this going yet. So, my plan is, right, we're going to use lots of storage buses in order to connect a bunch of extra chests, and that's going to be our starting system. We will get disk drives, but that's going to require us to get into magic, and I would really like to get some automation going before we start the magic. And I've now just added the extra things to our board, right, that we might have to look into. Is the Industrial Foregoing? We really just need to start it, right? We don't have anything going for Industrial Foregoing just yet. And then the Dissolution Chamber from Industrial Foregoing is probably the top machine we need from it. And then down here we have Powah, Energizing, and the Fernator. Those are top of the list. We're also in a position to do a little bit of cleanup. These two things I'm standing on are very vanilla cobblestone generators. We don't need them anymore because of our machine in the background. So let's go ahead and tear this down real quick. Come back inside, please. Thank you. While not fully cleaned up at the moment, this area looks totally different. We've had those cobblestone generators here for quite a long time. We'll probably fix that garden. In fact, this garden's probably not going to stay forever either. I have plans to move crops way off in the distance back that way. But that's not for today. That's for a future time. Earlier in the episode, I happened to say that a fully upgraded Stirling Dynamo, again, without integral components, would do 240 RF per tick. That was a mistake. It is actually 120. This is with 2 auxiliary reaction chambers and 2 multi-cycle injectors, right? And this is for fuel efficiency, and this is for maximum output. So we could actually make it generate more RF per tick, but then we would actually have less efficiency. And I think having a balance is a pretty good spot. To have 98% efficiency and get 120, not too bad. But you'll also notice I don't have them all upgraded like that. So this one's only 40 RF per tick, and we're going to fix that right now. We're going to go ahead and put 2 of each of these things in there. If they made it easy, that would be nice. So now this one's fully upgraded, and we're going to go ahead and upgrade the rest of them as well. Now they're all fully upgraded. We now have 6 Stirling generators all hooked up and running at full capacity is what we're going to have it for. 120 times 6 is 720. So we have 720 RF per tick to work with. Our limiting factor could be charcoal. However, our current situation, we're not having any issues. We have a little bit of a question now, right? We're going to set up our refined storage system in its permanent location much later on. So it's currently going to be over here in this building in a temporary location. The question we have is, do we want to fully replace our pretty pipe system? That means removing the crafting terminal, removing all of these pretty pipes, and instead hooking everything up today with the storage buses, which are actually not called storage bus, they are called an external storage. Same thing, this just connects to it and allows you to use it as a storage. If we do that, right, we will lose out on not much, really, honestly. Things we'll lose out on. We won't have a crafting terminal right yet because I don't have a crafting grid, but we'll get that soon. So we could swap everything out, and maybe we will. Maybe that is the correct approach. But I think to start with, we're going to start with a secondary system starting in the basement. I want a lot of our storage to be in storage drawers using a drawer controller to manage the whole thing. That means we should only have to have one external storage hooked up to that to get most of our items sorted. But that does also mean all the items behind us, right? We have 928 sugarcane in that box. This could be one single drawer. And it could share it with bamboo and saplings, and who knows, right? We could have a drawer for each one of those, or we could have a 2x2 drawer for things that we're not going to store too many of. That also means, though, that we'd likely want to have a bunch of drawers for all of these. All of these, for sure. I'd really like to have the ingots in compacting drawers, but let's go ahead and take a look at a compacting drawer. A compacting drawer can hold 128 stacks per drawer, which is already really nice. It takes osmium gears, which we could do, sheet metal, which we could do, the pedestal upgrade. This is the one thing that I'm unsure about. Right, in order to make this pedestal upgrade, we need pixie dust, and the pixie dust requires the Alfheim portal from Botania. We don't have any of this set up today, so we're not even going to attempt to get that. So our first system, right, will use normal drawers. When we first plug our controller in, we are going to significantly drain our system. Go ahead and take a look at this. Our energy cell basic can only store 1 million FE, which is actually quite a lot of FE, really, or RF, right, to have at one time. At least for us right now. It won't be in the future. The controller, look at this, it's going to store 10 million FE, right? So it's going to drain everything into that, and then it's going to be working overtime to refuel the power cell. At the same time, it will be draining just to even keep this thing lit. So what I'm going to do is we're going to plug this in all the way at the back. And again, remember, this is mostly temporary, but what we're going to do is we're going to have a drawer controller over here, and then we're just going to like line drawers up against the wall, and we'll probably run it around this way. I haven't fully decided yet. Again, it's mostly temporary. We want to get a crafter going, and I don't think we want to hook these up. I might want to leave these here to all be manual craft stations, and then we'll craft dedicated ones that'll be automated craft stations. So let's go ahead and plug this in now and watch our energy crisis occur. So the best part about the controller is you can click on it and you can see how much it's using. So it's using 256 FE per tick, which is quite a lot, although we do know that we're now up to 720 production per tick. Over here, our energy cell is draining. Like I said, it's going to fully deplete itself here very, very soon. But that's okay. Our Sterling Dynamos are now actually running at 100% production, 120 RF per tick. So each one, full production. And now we can see that. With the energy cell being depleted, we have a constant 720 in here, because the 720 from our dynamos is all coming in through the bottom, and then it's all coming out almost immediately through the back, or even through the side here, technically. 2.3 million and counting. We're going to go ahead and let this count up. At this moment, these machines here might possibly run out of fuel if I were to put things in there for them to work on. This is something interesting to note. This energy cable is totally empty, and we can see our energy in the redstone furnace is going down. This is an important furnace, right? Because this creates the charcoal, which powers everything else. It looks to me like it's prioritizing the back instead of the side. So very temporarily, we're going to go ahead and stick another one here to make sure that this gets charged back up. We do not want this one to run out. I'm sure we have enough charcoal already in this box in order to fully keep these charged and everything in order to get these, the battery filled back up and our controller filled up. However, again, right, we want to make sure this doesn't run out. I am happy to report that our energy cell is now back up to full, and you may notice I have recessed the controller a little bit into the wall, and I'll show you why in just a second. But we have 256 per tick, and the full 10 million is in there. So I want to actually put some cable out this way, and then we're going to attach our grid. But before I attach the grid, I want to show you something kind of important. If I right-click the controller again, we now have 3 cables here, and it's actually using 5 FE per tick, and you can see that reflected in our usage. It has gone up. So everything we add to this network will start to cost more and more power. The grid, 64 FE per tick. Now we're up to 335. So remember, we have 720 total, but 720 has to be shared among all these machines. So if we start to approach that 720 limit, we're going to have to look into the Powah Fernator to replace some of these Stirling dynamos. But we have the grid now. We can see we have storage. Our storage is down here. It's not actually connected just yet. We're going to connect it right now. External storage is going to go on to our drawer controller. And actually, one more thing I'd like to do is go ahead and lock all of these drawers. We're going to set these up very specific to what they're going to be. You can see we have a whole wall of just the 2x2s, so 4 storage in each space. And then we have 2 walls here of the singles for larger bulk items. All we have to do is connect this up. 1, 2, and, well, that torch is technically in the way. And 3. Now connected. Let's go ahead and look and see what's up in here. The external storage now takes 32 FE per tick. But the good news is, right, it doesn't appear that the drawers themselves are, cost any additional power. It's just the connection into this one drawer controller. That does also tell us that if we wanted to use external storage for a whole bunch of chests, like we have upstairs, that would actually start to cost quite a bit of money pretty quickly. My goal isn't to totally replace our storage upstairs. Not yet, right? I don't think we need to have mob drops represented in here yet. Really, what I want to have in here are crafting components, and those are going to be things like gears or metal sheets or ingots, probably, that kind of stuff, so that we can hopefully start making use of auto crafting. Speaking of auto crafting, it would also be nice if we could do manual crafting in our refined storage system. So this grid is great, right? Because it would allow us to take items in and out. And in fact, let's go ahead and just demonstrate this working. Let's make sure we're hooked up correctly. If I put my dirt right there, and we come back up to the grid, we should see that 19 dirt represented in our system, which it is. I can put more in. I can take it all out. That was locked as a drawer, so I should be able to put it back in. Perfect. I'm going to want to remove that lock, because I don't think we want dirt in there. But this is, I mean, right, like I was saying, this is great for being able to utilize our storage, but let's maybe want to be able to craft things. So we're going to take a grid, and we're going to craft a crafting grid, and all that is just another grid, so we can actually break this one and use it with an advanced processor and a crafting table. And if we need to start getting into auto crafting, which we're going to make right next, pattern grid. The pattern grid again is another grid, and then advanced processor and a pattern. So they're not super expensive. The most expensive bit itself is the grid, which needs machine casings and a couple destruction, construction, and improved processors. Okay, we got an achievement for upgrading your grid. Let's go ahead and see what the new crafting grid looks like, how it differs from the previous one. Also, let's see, does it take more? Wow, it sure does take a lot more FE per tick. We're now at 446. This is really going to be an expensive power system. But our crafting grid is now represented in the same way that the last grid was. We have our items up here, but we now also have the crafting table, which is very useful. Now that we have our pattern grid, let's go ahead and set it on top. Here it is. So the pattern grid looks a little bit like the crafting grid, but this down here isn't for crafting. This is for assigning patterns, which we're going to have to make some patterns because I don't have any. but the patterns themselves are not useful without having a crafter. So I'm going to go ahead and make a few patterns and a crafter so that we can actually auto-craft something. We also have a few refined storage quests to turn in, which will get us some nice items like cables. Yep, we'll take those. This one has a refined storage loot box. We could get anything out of it, right? What do we get? Ah, processor binding. That's like a terrible reward. How about this one? Advanced processors. Okay, I'll take those. They're a little better, right? They do take some Enderium coins and some flux. And here is our crafter, also completing the next quest. Automation at its finest. This one has 2 loot boxes. Ugh, more processor bindings. But we did get an exporter, and an exporter is something that might come in handy. Okay, we're gonna craft 10 patterns. These patterns are just quartz enriched iron, some redstone, and some glass. So they're pretty cheap, actually, and we're gonna end up using a lot of them. We're gonna also put our crafter unit just like right here. I think we can leave it exactly where it is. That's fine. I'm concerned how much energy this is gonna be taking. Let's go ahead and look at our system. Because our crafting grid is 128, our pattern grid is 128, the crafter is 64. That puts us at 670. We are really, really pushing our limit. But the way that the pattern works is we're going to go ahead and set the pattern in here, and you know what? Let's go ahead and make a recipe for a pattern. So we're gonna go ahead and pull out the rest of these, and we'll pull out some glass and some redstone. And we're gonna go ahead and throw this in our system. Now, I don't have drawers set up for this, and I'll show you why I'm able to store things at the moment. But, to start off with, how do we make a pattern useful? Okay, so first we come over to our pattern in our JEI tool, and we're going to move the items. We have 2 different options here. We have processing and exact. If we say exact, we'll only use normal Minecraft glass, and we won't use any of the other types of glass. I'm gonna say that's fine. So all we have to do is take a look at this, make sure it looks correct. This is the recipe, and this is the output. It is important to have the output listed here. Then we're gonna hit the create button, and when we do, it's going to move one of these patterns down here, and it will now be a programmed pattern. And it shows one pattern uses exact mode. So that's the details. You can shift hover over it to see the inputs and the outputs. Next, we come down to our crafter, and we will slot it in. It looks like we have 9 total slots. So there's only 9 recipes that it's able to know at any given moment. Let's check to see. Did the crafter go up in price now that it has a recipe? 80. It sure did. We're now at 686. So this is also, this is just very quickly informing us of what our next episode's gonna be about. We need to ramp up power production. But, right, we have this crafter, we have a pattern set up. Let's go ahead and tell it to craft 1. Now, we don't have any patterns in our system. We do technically have 9 more in the pattern grid up there, but we don't have any in storage. So if we come to this, we can tell it how many we would like to craft. Let's pretend we want to make 64, and I'm gonna hit the start button. Oh, crafting preview, you are missing all of this redstone, all of this glass. We have 10 available, but you need 182. This is one of the beauties of the refined storage crafting system, is it will let you know what you're missing. The other beauty, once we get into much more, higher levels of automation, is we're gonna have it auto-crafting all of these sorts of items. But let's go back, and instead, we will say, craft the 1 item, start, available, 3 to craft 1. We hit the start button, and it's done already. That's how fast this was. This crafter can technically only do 1 craft at a time, but it doesn't really take any time in order to do the craft. So there we have it. Refined storage, in its infancy, is hooked up in our basement. Now, I did want to show you how it was able to store some additional items. it turns out we have a second storage bus hooked up to a diamond chest. The diamond chest just has a lot of space, right? So this will let us have a lot of like one-offs. Although I would argue that most of these items won't be one-offs and they will get slotted into drawers. There is one more very important thing that needs to be worried about when you have multiple things hooked up. Oh, I don't need those scaffolds. The other important thing to note is when you right-click on the external storage itself, you're going to see it has some slots up here. We're not going to worry about these right now. The thing that we are going to worry about is priority, okay? We want the storage drawers, the drawer controller itself, to be the highest priority thing in our network. So we're just going to set this to be like 100. The higher the number, the more priority. But what that means is if an item can go in here, there's no way it would ever go over here. And vice versa, right? This has space. We want to make sure that anything that could go in here is actually going to go here first. Another interesting thing, when you right-click the external storage, it will show you, right? 0% full, technically, right? Look at that. We got all the space. And we have now reached the end of our episode, and as we speak, I have actually disconnected the crafter, the pattern terminal, the crafting grid. I've disconnected them all because they're taking way too much power and they're depleting our coal or charcoal resource. So that is what we need to do in the next episode. Powah. Powah is on the table. We need to get furnators. We need to, let's actually take a look at this real quick, right? The Furnator, somewhere over here, the basic one. We could make the basic one reinforced blast bricks, which we know has to go with blast brick and steel plates, which is a sequenced assembly, red nether brick, coke brick, blast brick, and construction paste. We've done this before, we can do it again. However, could we go right to the hardened version? The hardened version takes a sterling dynamo still. It doesn't actually take a furnator necessarily. You could upgrade one. The difference between the two is this takes a basic capacitor, which again is sequenced assembly with some items. The hardened one takes energized steel, dielectric paste, and the basic capacitors. So let's look into energizing a bit in the next episode. Frost steel ingots? We gotta look into that too. So we have some things on the horizon, things we need to do, improvements to make. I can't wait to see you there, along with me on this ride of Enigmatica 6 Expert. So, if you've enjoyed the episode, please consider subscribing, liking, leave me a comment. I love to read the comments. I read every single one of them. Usually I upvote them, and frequently I reply. So, that being said, this is Merc Serene, signing off.